Exceptionalism in decline. Let's discuss the state of America in 2020, where we've been over the last 20 years or so, and whether or not this country can still claim its exceptionalism and how great we are. And as Americans, they feel so more privileged, and we're so good, we're so much better than other nations, at least our developed contemporary nations around the globe when compared to other liberal Western democracies. This country, you can't claim we're so exceptional. You can't claim we're so much better. We do this better, we do that better. Please. Let's just go back roughly almost 20 years now. I mean, you could probably go back to Vietnam, but I obviously wasn't alive then, so I'm just going to do from within my lifetime. From 9/11 until now is when I firmly believe this country's superpower standards and its exceptionalism has been in a slowly decline. I mean, you got 9/11, it upended the world. It changed the way we travel. It invoked us to bring something along like the Patriot Act, and it changed the way we see the world. It changed the way we do things. It also brought us into an awful war in Iraq, which led to more terrible decisions down the line. This, and then you throw in the crash of 2008. So less than a decade later, you had a major recession for which was spurred on by just greedy people being greedy and fraud, really. And it was awful, obviously. I mean, I'm slightly over 30 years old, and now with this coronavirus thing, I've lived through already within a little more than a decade span 2 massive downturns in an economy. So you have 9/11 to 2008, and we didn't really learn much of what went happen in 2008 because we really started doing the same things in terms of loans and banks and the way we lend out money. And then that takes us to the election of Donald Trump and the fact that someone like that was able to be elected in this country, and he still has about 50% of the country supporting him. Now, there are obviously things that led him to be elected, a lot of moving parts in terms of him running up against probably the worst candidate ever in Hillary Clinton, and a lot of other moving things, and the turmoil within inside the GOP and the Republican Civil War going on. Obviously, all of those things contribute, but him being elected president is not a sign of a healthy country. It's not a sign of a superpower. It's not a sign of a country that is on the up and up. Then that brings us to someone as inept and as incompetent as him to where we are now. And coronavirus and COVID-19 ravaging this country, killing thousands of people. I think at this point now we're up over 16,000. And the economy is just being destroyed. I mean, we're having, I think this week we had like 6.5 million people apply for unemployment. And some economists, and I've read some pretty good articles from The Atlantic and other spots, New York Times, about we could potentially see unemployment up at around 20%. And that's just, you know, whenever there's unemployment, you always have to add in more, a little bit more of that, because there are a lot of people who aren't filing for unemployment for whatever reasons. There are certain jobs that don't qualify There are people who just stop looking for work. And in this scenario, there are people who can't look for work because maybe their whole career has been in like the restaurant industry, and there isn't a restaurant open that they can even look and apply to for a job. So they may not be, getting unemployment. It's nightmarish. It's scary. And none of those things that if someone told you them just flat out, are these signs of a great country? Are these signs of an exceptional country? You would not say yes. And then you get into some more just random statistics, as in we are 25th in the democracy index worldwide, 25th. Infant mortality, we're 44th. Incarcerated people, we're second. I say second because China definitely has, when you account for the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Muslims they have in concentration camps, which is basically just a prison, they are number one in incarcerated people, but we're two. High school graduation rate, we're 21st. Income inequality, we are right there along with in our rates of income inequality with countries like Turkey and Mexico and Bulgaria. We have the highest rates of obesity. We have in terms of the developed world, we have the most amount of uninsured people in terms of health insurance. And then you get a few of them were actually really high on the list, but you don't want to be high on the list. As in, we are 73% think Jesus was born to a virgin. 73% of Americans. My God. 3 in 4 Americans think angels are real. And slightly more than half of Americans think the founding fathers established this country as a Christian nation. Sad. It's nothing of established of a Christian nation. The founding fathers, and particularly one of the most, maybe the most important one, Thomas Jefferson, was definitely not religious. Probably wasn't an atheist, maybe a deist, but the Constitution mentions no word of Christianity. The founders by no means set out to establish a nation based on any religion. But people in this country, 55% of the people think that it was. I mean, the list goes on and on. And you can't tell me in the scenario we have now and the leader that we have in office and the fact that he's been able to get away with so many things, with so much, that nothing works, nothing sticks to him because he has a cult following that will support him all the way to him shooting a person on Fifth Avenue. He would get away with it. That is not a sign of a healthy country. Your president getting up there and talking about his ratings, his TV ratings for his pressers, and never once has the man mentioned or sent out a tweet of his condolences towards any particular family about anyone who has died of coronavirus, but he's talking about his ratings on his pressers. This is not normal. It's not a good sign. It doesn't project superiority or exceptionalism or power or morality or any kind of health to the world. It makes us look awful. And you can't tell me, and in this scenario, how everything is just collapsing under the weight. We have unemployment offices nationwide from state to state that can't handle the amount of filings that they're getting when they knew that this was coming. You knew you were going to have hundreds of thousands of people filing for unemployment. You should have beefed up these states weeks in advance. You should have outsourced some of this work to private companies to get the filings going, to process the claims, to beef up the servers, to be able to handle the influx of people. And now you see dystopian pictures of where we're not supposed to be shoulder to shoulder, and you have people shoulder to shoulder in the state of Florida waiting in line to get paper applications so they can apply for unemployment insurance that's going to take 4 to 5 weeks for them to get their money in the first place when they probably haven't already been paid from their job in 2 to 3 weeks, and the bills keep rolling in. You have people all around this country, and particularly there's videos of people in Pennsylvania, and they're waiting in lines to get food, and they're not homeless. They're just been unemployed, and there's no money coming in for weeks. And some of these shelters offering the food are running out of food. But you want to talk about how this country is exceptional. It's anything but. We could be, and we used to be, but we're not there right now. And I'm not really sure how we get our act together. I know the initial thing is we got to get better leaders, and particularly we got to get this malignant, horrible human being out of the Oval Office. That's priority one. And then we can start to try to piece together how else we can fix the issues we have. But they are deep-seated, and some of them are just tearing at the fabric of this country.